You may have heard a lot about tariffs over the last few days and weeks, but finally, we have some good news for millions and millions of Americans. So what exactly is this good news? Well, in this video, we'll break down exactly what's going on, what President Trump has said, and what we're likely to see going forward into 2025, both for the American economy and for the tariffs. So we'll break all this down in just a moment, but before we do, it takes just 2 seconds. If you're new around here and you enjoy these kind of updates, please do consider hitting the like and subscribe button down below. And without further ado, let's get into it. So countries from around the world have been subjected to tariffs applied by the Trump administration. Now, some countries have got a better deal than others. For example, in the UK, the tariff limit has been set to 10%. But in somewhere like China, just this week, countries like China were subjected to a 245% tariff applied by the Trump administration. Now, as you can imagine, that left a lot of people concerned. A lot of goods are made in China. A lot of services are provided by China. But we have heard a few things from the White House now that could spell very good news for the American people and for the American economy. Let's take a listen.
The White House was asked yesterday whether or not the president's engaged in a one-on-one talk with President Xi of China, and the White House not willing to go on the record with that, an indication that these conversations are still not happening at the most senior levels. Either way, all three major U.S. stock indexes are set to open sharply higher today, given some of the news the president and Treasury Secretary made within the last 24 hours, suggesting that the trade war won't last forever. As you all three know, there's been a major sell-off on Wall Street ever since the trade war began.
So you heard it right there. The president and the Treasury Secretary saying that the trade war won't last forever. So essentially, they are just going through the process of the trade war to try and get to the bottom of the problem. And they're also indicating, both the Treasury Secretary and the president, they're saying that they expect to have an answer to this problem by the summer. So we could start seeing real progress being made over the next 3 months. But let's hear what President Trump had to say, because he gave a press conference at the White House where he wasn't directly confirming it to be the case, but he was more or less teasing that these tariffs won't be in place for much longer. Take a listen.
145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high. It got up to that. We were talking about fentanyl, where various elements built it up to 145. No, it won't be anywhere near that high. It'll come down substantially, but it won't be zero. It used to be zero. We were just destroyed. China was taking us for a ride, and just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We're going to be very good to China. I have a great relationship with President Xi. But they would make billions and billions and billions of dollars a year, and they would build their military out of the United States and what they made. So that won't happen. But they're going to do very well, and I think they're going to be happy, and I think we're going to live together very happily and ideally work together. So I think it's going to work out very well. But no, it's at 145%. It will not be anywhere near that number.
Right there. He said the tariffs on China are going to lower substantially. They're not going all the way to zero, but they are going to lower substantially. And this is very good news for the average everyday consumer, because it means that we pay much less in fees to purchase a product that just so happens to either be shipped from China or have a Chinese country of origin. And likewise for China, if the tariffs reduce on US goods and services, then they can afford to purchase more of those goods and services from the US, leading to higher economic growth, higher GDP, higher revenue in terms of the export revenue. So all in all, lower tariffs are a good thing for global stability. Now, I've said this before on the channel that President Trump's negotiating strategy is very similar to what he speaks about in his book, The Art of the Deal. Let's say, for example, he was selling a building in New York, valued at $80 million. He will turn around to any prospective bidders and say, I want $150 million for this building, which is $70 million over the valuation. And the bidders must be going, you must be joking. The building's not worth that much. In the end, Trump slowly but surely lowers the asking price, not too far, but to a point where the bidders end up paying $90 million, and they're the ones that feel grateful. So what Trump has done is he's got his valuation of $80 million plus an additional $10 million on top because he made the bidders feel like that was a good deal. This is just the art of the deal 2.0. It's the art of the deal on the world stage. Now, when you apply that logic to the tariffs, it started as 245% tariffs on Chinese goods, got lowered to 145%. Now, of course, it can go back up again. I mean, the global situation can always change. But the reality of it is that 145% we can expect will go further and further and further lower over time. Now, you just go back to the beginning quickly. You know, when this whole thing started, President Trump was imposing, what was it, an additional 34% tariff on all Chinese products. China turned around and said, you know what, fair enough, we'll tariff you right back. And then, of course, President Trump is not going to have that, so he says, you know what, China, that's fine, you can do that as well. We'll increase our tariffs on you too. And then China does the same, the US does the same, China does the same, etc., etc. That's how this whole trade war began. However, now, according to reports, there has been a tone change, and President Trump is open to lowering those tariffs on China, and quite possibly substantially lowering those tariffs. I highly doubt either one of President Trump or President Xi would have wanted the tariffs to get to a point where you're talking 3-digit numbers, over 100%, over 200%, etc. But that 34% was the starting point. Let's have a read of this, because this is being updated in real time. Trump tariffs live updates. China eases some US tariffs as Trump says he wants concessions. US and China tariff tensions continue to dominate the focus, with signs of de-escalation mounting even as President Trump sent mixed signals on the state of relations. On Friday, reports emerged that China quietly rolled back tariffs on some US semiconductors, easing pressure on its tech sector, along with certain US pharmaceuticals. Bloomberg reported that Beijing is also weighing tariff relief on medical gear and chemicals. The developments came as China has struck a publicly defiant tone, and Trump sowed confusion by claiming that he had spoken with Chinese President Xi Jinping, which Beijing denied. So, it seems, away from the media's eyes, away from the public's eyes, progress is now being made on rolling back some of these, shall we say, tit-for-tat countermeasures when it comes to tariffs. Now, I'm not here to tell you that this is all going to be sorted out overnight. I'm not going to say that, come Friday next week, this will all be done and dusted and we can go back to life as we knew it before. That's not my position, and it's not going to happen. But what I can tell you, hence the title of this video, things are going to be better, because this undoubtedly is good news for everyone. But remember, China's only one country. While they certainly do produce a lot, they don't produce everything. All countries from all over the world have been affected by these tariffs. But China was the first brick out of the wall. China was the first domino to fall, so to speak. Now you should start seeing the domino effect with all the other countries around the world. Because what this shows is if you offer concessions, if you lower your own tariff and tax rates on US imports, you will then be likely to get a better deal from the US governments. As we've seen with China, they offered concessions with pharmaceutical drugs, they offered concessions with US semiconductors, and now Trump has changed his tone and has started to reduce some of the tariffs on China. That on its own provides a workable model for all the other countries around the world. So the tariffs won't keep going up. We can now expect them to start stabilizing and over time start to reduce as well, following negotiations, following concessions, following eventual trade deals being made with the US where they feel like they're winning and they've offered a fair deal to their counterparts too. But let's see what happens over the summer. At the very least, they're talking. And that, in and of itself, is very, very good news. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on the situation. I'd love to hear from you. I'll be returning soon in the coming days, but until then, see you all later and take care.